everybody? Welcome back. Gerald here with your weather forecast. Hope you're having a wonderful start to your week, and hopefully you're staying safe. We have a real icy mess going on out there, especially from sections of Texas up through Arkansas, Oklahoma, and that is going to continue to spread into sections of Tennessee and Kentucky going into tonight and tomorrow. And this is only round one. We have likely 3 rounds of precipitation here that we're going to deal with that is going to cause, trust me, really a real icy mess for a lot of us throughout this week. And then we're also going to talk about that shot of dangerously cold air that is going to make its way into the Northeast this weekend. Kind of a freakish shot of cold air, honestly, because it's going to be kind of confined there, and it's going to be a quick hit of that cold air, but it will be very potent. And what that could do, and I'm really going to emphasize the word could here, because I don't want anybody trying to stretch my words and turn it into something I didn't say, but what it could do is potentially produce some icy conditions into the Carolinas and the Mid-Atlantic going into the second half of this weekend and potentially the very start of next week. So we're going to talk about all of that in today's video. We're going to break it all down. So this video might be a little bit longer than my past couple, but that will be okay because we have a lot to talk about. I also do want to say thank you so much for all the support over the past couple days. We are now approaching 850 subscribers, which is super cool. We are getting very close to that 1,000 goal. So if you're not already subscribed, I'd love for you to do that. We're really trying to get to 1,000 here, and we are getting very, very close. And I definitely think we can get there within a very short period of time. With all that said, though, let's go ahead and jump right into it because I don't want to waste too much of your time today. I know we're all very busy people, so we're going to try to get through this in a quick and timely manner. So I'm going to give you a lot of information very quickly today. Okay. So here we go. Starting off looking at these hazards, you can tell we got quite a system we're working with here, with those winter storm warnings stretching all the way down into south central Texas, up through southeastern Oklahoma, northern Arkansas, southern Missouri, and even ice storm warnings here into sections of central Arkansas and off towards the Memphis area. So that does include Little Rock and Memphis in that ice storm warning. So we're definitely going to watch for that. And then winter weather advisory stretching all the way up here through Kentucky and into sections of West Virginia for that potential of that wintry weather throughout this week. So taking a look at radar here, you can see we are dealing with some of this very light kind of freezing drizzle and sleet right now across sections of the Dallas metro area up through Oklahoma City, Tulsa, seeing some of that freezing drizzle and sleet throughout the day. We've even had some lightning this morning, which was super crazy to see lightning with this sleet and freezing rain falling. But what is going to happen tonight is this plume of moisture is going to then work its way up towards the Memphis and Little Rock area. And then we're likely going to get more rounds of this frozen precipitation going into the next couple of days. So looking at those reports out there, you can see we are getting tons of these reports of that ice here from Dallas up through OKC, through Tulsa, and into sections of northern Arkansas and southern Missouri, also getting in on some of those reports right now. And I expect this to increase through sections, of Arkansas, Missouri, and western Tennessee going into tonight and into tomorrow. So what is causing all this? You can see right now we have this Arctic boundary continuing to drive southward, and that is helping to overlap with some of this warm Gulf air, overriding that cold air with moisture, and that is leading to this freezing rain and sleet that is causing a real travel nightmare for a lot of us. And unfortunately, that's going to continue for most of us through the next couple of days at least, before eventually clearing out going into this weekend. So let's go ahead and time this out for us. We'll start here into sections of Dallas and kind of the just southern plains in general, and then we'll move up through the Ohio River Valley, and we'll talk about those places as well. So currently, like we talked about, dealing with this freezing rain and kind of this pinkish color, and then sleet in this purplish color, just to give you an idea there of what we're dealing with. This is going to continue throughout the evening before eventually getting a bit of a lull going into the overnight while that current batch of precipitation moves off to the north and east. But once we get into tomorrow, we'll get more rounds of kind of this freezing drizzle and sleet to move through sections of Dallas, central Texas, before getting what I call kind of the last hoorah out of this system going into Wednesday morning. I think we're going to get a big area of that precipitation to develop here over pretty much the heart of Texas. And this is whenever I think we're going to pick up most of our freezing rain accumulation. You can see that modeled here going into Wednesday. Look at this big area of freezing rain developing. So if there's a day I think that this storm really peaks here in the southern plains, it's going to be Wednesday. I already wouldn't want to be traveling in these areas, but especially going into Wednesday morning into Wednesday afternoon, really going to be quite the travel nightmare here right across the heart of Texas from Dallas back westbound towards Lubbock and Amarillo. Although I think the panhandles here of Texas and Oklahoma stay relatively clear out of this, although cold. And then this will continue throughout the day Wednesday, getting waves of this moisture to override this cold Arctic air, leading to that freezing rain potential. And then you can see as we go into Wednesday evening, this wave continues, going even into the overnight and into Thursday morning before I think we finally begin to clear out of some of that wintry precipitation. And just maybe even this kind of warm air will eventually beat out this cold air going later into Thursday and Friday. I think we'll see more of potentially rain and kind of drizzle compared to that freezing drizzle going into the later stages of this event before finally clearing out for us going into Friday afternoon. And that's whenever we should also begin to hopefully start getting above freezing going into this weekend. So any of that ice that is left over should finally begin to melt, and we should see much better travel conditions going into this coming weekend. So how much ice are we talking about here? This is our latest blend of models, and really seeing that bullseye right over the heart of Texas here, from Dallas-Fort Worth back over here into sections of central Texas. I think a widespread 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch of ice is going to be very likely here from Dallas back westbound through sections of Texas here. And just to give you an idea of how much ice that is, you normally begin to see problems at 1/10 of an inch. This would be double, triple that amount of ice. So this is whenever you start running into power outages once you get into these levels, and just pretty much impossible travel for a lot of us here through sections of Texas. And then we do have those ice totals continuing up here into southeastern Oklahoma rather, and then into sections of Arkansas, which we'll talk more about here in a second. So, speaking more about those areas, talking about the Ohio River Valley here, also, we are not going to be spared from this system. Plenty of ice to go around here for a lot of people. And something I haven't really mentioned, but also a lot of rain to the south of this ice. So where we'll see that boundary of ice setting up, you're also going to have rain to the south of that. So Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, the Carolinas seeing a lot of rain this week in terms of, I guess, rainy conditions. It won't actually amount to that much rain just because of how light it'll be, but it's going to really feel kind of like a dreary week throughout this week. So looking here, though, at the Ohio River Valley, going into tonight, we will have that sleet and freezing rain beginning to get going here into sections of Arkansas, southern Missouri, seeing some of that as well. So I think an area like Little Rock's going to be a lot of freezing rain, although up here into the Ozarks, maybe more of a sleet story. So could get that ground covered white there in a lot of areas, although this is not the stuff you want to play in because this is still ice nonetheless. Going into tomorrow morning, or I should say going into midnight tonight and into tomorrow morning, this line of wintry precipitation begins to stretch upwards here, going into sections of Kentucky, southern Ohio, and then Memphis here getting some probably moderate freezing rain, honestly, going into the overnight tonight. So tomorrow morning during rush hour traffic, even if the skies are kind of clear and you're not seeing anything fall, travel is going to be treacherous out here into sections of northern Arkansas over towards Memphis. So tomorrow morning, I really would not travel at all if I don't have to in these areas, because even if nothing's falling from the sky, we're still going to be stuck below freezing and dealing with all that ice still accumulated on those roadways. So that's going to cause real problems. And then into tomorrow morning, seeing that boundary of frozen precipitation setting up here into sections of Kentucky, and then eventually working its way into West Virginia as well, going later into tomorrow. I think mainly rain here for Nashville with this, although it'll be close. Nashville, if it's raining, it's going to be like 35 in rain. So if this line does dig far enough south into the Nashville area, we've got to be very careful and watch that potential for some freezing rain there. But right now, looks like mostly rain for Nashville before we kind of clear out of that first wave here going into Tuesday afternoon. But what that does do is then sets up the stage for that next round going into Tuesday night. And Tuesday night here, I think Nashville then could get in on some of this freezing rain. But this will be a bit more scattered than this first round that we're dealing with. But still seeing some of that scattered freezing rain from Memphis up through Nashville, Little Rock as well, seeing that. And that will continue throughout the day Tuesday and into Tuesday night before going into Wednesday. Again, we clear up a bit before this next batch of heavier precipitation moves in, going into Wednesday, or into Thursday, I should say, and into Thursday afternoon. So looking at that here, going into Thursday afternoon, kind of hard to tell here on this model just because, unfortunately, our mesoscale models don't go this far out, but I would expect some freezing precipitation here for a lot of the same areas going into Thursday from Little Rock over to Memphis and potentially Nashville as well, before eventually we clear out in a lot of these areas going into Thursday night and into Friday afternoon before a much nicer weekend and once again warming back up and kind of melting any of that ice that is left over. So how much ice for these areas? The bullseye through here will definitely be from Little Rock to Memphis, seeing I think upwards of 1/4 of an inch of ice out of this system as a whole throughout the week. So you're going to be very careful. But another problem with this system is just how long of a duration it is. From now until really like Thursday, Friday, we're going to be stuck below freezing. So any ice that does accumulate will be stuck there for a while. So even if the skies are clear in between these waves of frozen precipitation, that doesn't mean that you can get out there and travel easily, because it's still going to be plenty cold enough for that ice to be left over. And unfortunately, ice isn't like snow. It's not something that your car's tires can kind of grip on, or that snow plows can kind of just plow out of the way. It's much more difficult to work with throughout these regions. Then definitely some smaller accumulations through sections of Kentucky and West Virginia as well. So that's why we do have those winter weather advisories up there compared to the ice storm warnings into places of Arkansas and Tennessee. So on the backside of this system, we are finally going to clear out here. You'll see going into kind of that Friday time frame, much nicer weather through the section of the country here that's going to be dealing with that ice. It'll be much clearer, and we'll begin to warm up going into this weekend, which will help to melt some of that ice. But what we do get on the back end of this is this very cold shot of Canadian air that is going to work its way into the northeast. And I do definitely want to discuss that here because this will be super cold, and I want to talk about that. So going into Thursday afternoon here, you can see we're still kind of stuck with those colder temperatures here through a lot of those areas that see that ice. But as we finally get into Friday afternoon and into this weekend, we'll likely begin to kind of get back above freezing, at least through a lot of these areas. But where we will not get above freezing is here into the northeast. This is where we're going to see some of that frigidly cold air. See temperatures here close to 40 below what they should be this time of year going into Saturday morning. And it is going to be frigid, trust me. And that will continue going into the second half of this weekend, and that cold air even working its way down here into the Carolinas with some cold air damming, which could set up the stage for some ice there, which we'll talk about here in a second, before finally going into next week, rebounding a lot and seeing above average temperatures once again to start next week. So, talking about how cold it's going to get this weekend here into the Northeast, this is for Saturday morning, below freezing throughout Boston, all the way down through Rhode Island, Connecticut, single digits likely from Philly up to New York, northern Jersey also stuck in those single digits. So this is very cold air. And then up here into the higher terrains, 20 below into sections of Vermont, New Hampshire, and those really high elevations likely getting 30, 40 below. So definitely some frigid Arctic air that we're going to be dealing with. The good news is going into Saturday, we do have a very cold day, but as we get into Sunday afternoon, we're already kind of back to normal. So it's kind of a freakish cold shot, honestly. It's one of those things that just comes out of nowhere, punches you real quick, and then kind of runs afterwards. And we see much more January-like weather, not quite as frigid after that. But what that could set the stage for, and as I've been talking about, is the potential for some icing here into the Carolinas and Virginia. So I do want to discuss that here. Just kind of give you a general idea of what we're working with. That very cold air that's going to work its way into the northeast with this high pressure is going to likely funnel down the backside of the Appalachian Mountains here, and we call this cold air damming. If you live in the Carolinas, you hear about this every winter. This is pretty much how we get most of the snow or ice that we get in the Carolinas is with this cold air damming effect. So pretty much what it does is just this cold air kind of slides down behind the mountains here and gets trapped in the Piedmont and foothills. And then whenever you get precipitation to override that, that's whenever you get icy trouble or sometimes snow if we're lucky enough. But if we do get anything this weekend here, I don't think it will be much snow at all. So we'll look at the GFS here. The GFS has been the most kind of bullish with this idea of seeing something. So Going into Saturday night here and Sunday morning, you see this wedge of cold air working in here, and then we get enough of this Atlantic and Gulf moisture to kind of help produce some precipitation. So into sections of the Carolinas here, you see some of this precipitation breaking out. And what I'll actually do here, I should have done this earlier, sorry, is I'll zoom this in for you so you can see this a little bit better. But going into this event, you can see some of that frozen precipitation breaking out here across sections of the Piedmont and foothills. So right now, if I were to pick somewhere that probably has the highest chance of seeing this, if anybody, it would definitely be here into the Piedmont and the foothills of the Carolinas, seeing potentially some of this ice as the GFS depicts here. And that would continue into Sunday afternoon with potentially a quick wave or two of that frozen precipitation before quickly clearing out. So that's the GFS. Looking at our Euro model here for the same time period, if you look at the southeast and mid-Atlantic here, you see nothing really. We have the cold air in place, the Euro does show that, but we just don't get any of that precipitation to overlap it. So we are still dealing with discrepancies here with our models, and I'll show you one more just in terms of fairness to the Canadian model here, which a lot of the times doesn't get talked about, so we'll be nice and show it just for the purpose of this conversation. The Canadian, though, is much more like the GFS here. You can see going into this weekend, although the Canadian doesn't show ice, it does show precipitation, at least getting here kind of into the Carolinas, going into the second half of this weekend and into early next week. So again, a lot of discrepancies with the models. You're seeing a lot of different things, so we have plenty of time to iron this out, and we'll watch those trends, but I do want to talk about it ahead of time, just because I think it is important to be honest that we do have that potential. So looking at the Euro ensembles, although the Euro showed nothing, it does show the idea of kind of this cold air damming effect and some icing within its ensembles. Now this is just a trace of ice that is being shown here, but it is at least showing that we do have that chance of seeing some of that frozen precipitation, especially into the Piedmont and foothills of the Carolinas into this weekend. And looking at our blend of models, a lot of the same story here. Again, just showing a glaze right now, but nonetheless, that could produce some icing potential into the Carolinas this weekend. So we'll make sure to watch that. We'll watch those trends, but right now, we're much more worried about the ice falling into sections of Texas, Oklahoma, through Little Rock and Memphis, where we have some of those winter storm warnings and ice storm warnings. So if you enjoyed the video, I'd love for you to hit that like button, and I'd really love for you to subscribe because we are getting so close to 1,000. And I can't really put into words how grateful I am for all the support I've gotten over the past couple days and really over the past month and a half since I started this up. This has been some pretty incredible growth that has been experienced here. So with all that said, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay safe out there if you're being impacted by that ice, and make sure you tune in tomorrow for tomorrow's video, and I will see you all then.